What's going on, everyone? Welcome to a Friday edition of On Cue. I'm your host, as always, Rich Quinones, our good friend Lloyd Vance, host of Lloyd Vance's Insider Football on 1029 The Game, part of the Broad Street South Network down in Tampa, Florida. And our good friend Angel Martinez, kind enough to join us. We continue our off-season look into the NFL. It never stops and never sleeps, as Lloyd has alluded to for the past 15 something odd years that we've been doing this. And right now we kind of take a look at the NFC North, our show today from our good friends over at Fresh Rose Coffee. And of course, Play It Again Sports, 1450 Clemens Ridge Road in Deptford, New Jersey. All right, so let's start with really, I guess you can say we bled into this yesterday with BYP with the Chicago Bears, and we'll kind of work our way down up. This is still a team that won 7 games last year, mind you, with a quarterback that they just turned around and basically gave away for nothing to the Pittsburgh Steelers, as in Justin Fields. The talk is they're going to go draft Caleb Williams. And look, they've got some weapons. I think deceptively, they have a very good defense. And I don't believe that defense has been talked enough about when you talk about the Chicago Bears. I mean, I put up their numbers. So their plus minus difference was minus 19 points for, points against 379. So you do the math. They actually came on late last year, but as I alluded to, this is a team that had problems winning on the road, just 3-7. They will probably have problems winning on the road with a young quarterback. Check that, Lloyd, 2-7 if they draft Williams, which by all counts they will. But you look at that division right now, there's a change of the guard in Minnesota. Detroit's still Detroit, and then we'll get to Green Bay in a moment. So thoughts on Chicago and their needs for the offseason?
Q, this is an interesting team because, as you said, at the end of the season, they kind of saved Matt Eberflus's job. They won some games and got a little hot down the stretch. And Ryan Poles is their general manager. He's a young guy that came there, and he's trying to build a program. The McCaskey family has given them the vote of confidence.
Yep.
Sometimes that can be dreaded one way or the other, but it
Right.
seems like Eberflus is going to have his opportunity. And as you said, they have the first pick, and then they turn around and they have their own. Their first pick was acquired from Carolina, and now they have the ninth pick in the
Yeah.
first round as well. So this is a team, they can bring some young difference makers in there. But at this time, yes, they are looking up at the rest of the teams in this division. So I do like their defense a lot. Edmonds did a nice job coming over from the Bills. Good solid linebacker. They built around him, and then they traded for Sweat coming from Washington, gave him extension, and he's a guy that's extending players. So we'll see how Eberflus does with the defense. That's his calling card. Offensively, obviously, they are making some changes. They're going to bring Caleb Williams in here. Caleb Williams looked good in some games, didn't look good in some other ones. Gotten a lot of shootouts at USC, but he's a quarterback that's coming there. Obviously, the prohibitive number one
Yeah.
quarterback in this draft. He's a guy who can move around the pocket. Not huge, big guy, but he has a nice, solid arm. Some are comparing him to Patrick Mahomes. I'm not ready to go there yet, but I think he can be a young guy to come in there and make some starts. The interesting thing, Q, is with the Bears, they did a lot already in terms of free agency. You talked about getting rid of Justin Fields, and they had to do that because when you bring in that stud young quarterback, you don't want to have him looking over his shoulder. So now they'll have Tyson Badgett, who's still there, a guy who
Mm-hmm.
played some games, and they bring DeAndre Swift over
Yep.
from the Eagles,
Big move.
and he can catch the football. He only had 39 catches for the Eagles, but I think they're going to use him a variety of ways a lot more for the Bears. So they'll have him and Rashawn Johnson and Khalil Herbert, two leftover guys. And then their receiving core, Q, has gotten real exciting because they have Keenan Allen.
Yep.
They bring him over from the Chargers. Yes, he's 32 years old, but he had a very good season last season. I think he had 7 or 8 touchdown catches, proving that he can still play. And then that'll build upon what they did last year, bringing in DJ Moore. So they have them, and then they have 2 good tight ends as well. Cole Kmet, who's there, had a very nice season in the red zone, and particularly catching touchdown passes. And they bring in Gerald Everett, another former Charger. So it's going to be fun to watch this team play.
Yeah, running back, tight end, young quarterbacks best friend. And you mentioned DeAndre Swift, very familiar, obviously, in that division, spending time with the Detroit Lions, his first team before he was shipped out and played for the Philadelphia Eagles. I thought they just really underutilized him. I mean, think about it. He should have, quote, fresh legs. You mentioned the wide receivers. Allen runs great routes, rarely drops balls, more, at times an enigma. But it's going to be the Williams show. They're going to let this kid go out there and sling it. And you talked a little bit about that base 4-3 and that defense. Listen, again, this is a team that won 7 games. So you think maybe with Williams, do they win that 4 to 5 to 6, or they keep making that ascension? Who knows? But we kind of know the direction they're going. As you alluded to, that second draft pick in the top 10 is always a big time opportunity to really start to build that franchise back up. And then it also is a saving grace. It gives the head coach who's been on the hot seat a little bit of a grace period. Then you look at Minnesota, and Minnesota basically lets Kirk Cousins walk. This is 2 years removed away from hosting a playoff game in which they lost to the Giants, turning around, dealing with the loss of Cousins last year, having all these injuries, having all these issues, only winning 7 games, but still winning 7 games because of the journeyman quarterback in Dobbs. They bring in another journeyman who's, I think, only 25, 26. You think Sam Darnold's been around forever. They also made a move for Aaron Jones. Again, Packers, now to Minnesota. So you still got very good wide receivers in Jefferson. I just think, you're trying to figure out the direction of that team. Is Darnold going to be that bridge quarterback? He's had his moments in the NFL. And if you go back and you look at a couple of those games that, and I believe it was 2 years ago with Carolina, where he actually played fairly well. And then all of a sudden, boom, what happens? More injuries, you get benched. San Francisco, again, just kind of a cup of coffee last year with the 49ers, a mop-up duty. So I don't know, man, Darnold's only 26. Do they believe they can get 4, 5, 6 years out of him?
Well, it's an interesting one, too, because, Connell's there and it has so many weapons. And the thing is, they have to pay Justin Jefferson
Yeah,
their wide receiver. And I think that's what they're greasing the skids for. He is tremendous talent, a guy when healthy. He's probably one of the top 2, 3 receivers in the league, just so explosive, opens everything up for everybody. And getting back to the quarterback position, Darnold kind of last year he had a growing season. He goes to the Niners. He got some playing time here and there. But he kind of was able to jumpstart his career after we know he kind of flamed out with the Jets,
yeah,
obviously, who selected him and the Carolina Panthers. So, had a learning season, was able to go pretty far in the playoffs for the Niners, and hopefully he was able to learn something from Shanahan and that group there. But I just can't see Sam Darnold at this point in his career unless he has the rejuvenation of like per se like a Kurt Warner later on in his career. I just see him more as a backup type and a guy who is a good teammate. And you have Darnold, you have Nick Mullins and Jaron Hall who are
definitely a
there.
drop off. I mean, that's
Yeah,
a big
it's
time
a
drop
huge
off.
drop.
Yeah, from
And,
Kirk
and we know
Cousins.
Kirk Cousins, I always pick on him for his prime time record and all that, but he's a good, solid
Yeah,
professional quarterback,
yeah,
especially in the regular season. He's usually going to protect the
yeah,
football, make a lot of big time throws, and for the most part, he was always pretty active. He was not hurt that much,
yeah.
so he was out there early enough. I know this past season, obviously, Cousins got hurt, but it's going to be interesting to see if this is the group they go with, because if I'm looking at this talent for talent right now, I'd have to say the Vikings are kind of sliding down the scale in this division. Aaron Jones, the Packers, they had enough in terms of his injuries, and he was a guy they couldn't really count on him, his availability. So I still think he's kind of uh, has some good years left in him, but he's 29 years old. Maybe this season is a litmus test, and you know does this turn out to be 1 year? Does it turn out to be 3 years? We'll see. I think early in the season, his projection totals and all that. I talked about Jefferson, and then
Yep.
you obviously have Jordan Addison on the other side, a good young explosive receiver. They also have the tight end T.J. Hawkinson, who they traded for surprisingly in division. They traded with the Lions and got him, and he had a great season last year for them at tight end position, but he also was banged up a little bit here and there. Um, but the Vikings got to fix their defense as well.
That's what I was going to say.
I know they have Harrison Smith back there.
Yep.
He's going to finish his career with the Vikings. Obviously, great career with him. But other than that, Q, they don't have a lot on this defense, and they allowed too many big plays, and I think that's where they need to go in terms of the draft and rebuilding this team. So right now they're at the 11th position in the first round, and that'll give them an opportunity to look at that defense in my mind and say, okay, let's try to fortify that defense so they don't allow so many big plays and get in these shootout type of games that they've been in over and over the last two seasons. You know, they had so many one-score games, so
Yeah.
um, they were able to win them 2 years ago, but last year kind of was not the same type of situation.
Yeah. So defensively, just real quick, again, that was their bugaboo, even going back 2 years to that playoff loss to the Giants, where Jones just shredded them with Barkley and whatnot and Hodges. You look at their linebackers, Hunter's a real decent player, 16 and a half sacks from the linebacker spot, but it's always been their bugaboo. Offensively, again, it's just a drop off when you look at who they have on the roster. And now with Darnold and then Mullins and then the third quarterback, they sit at 11. I'm wondering if they're looking to maybe do, a little movement here come draft time and go out and get a quarterback. I mean, think about it. I hate to rehash it, knowing now what we know with Pittsburgh giving up essentially a fifth rounder for Justin Fields. You could have had that quarterback right in your backyard in your division. So, yeah, both those teams, Minnesota and the Bears, coming off 7-win campaigns. That moves us to Green Bay. Listen, we look at these teams that have the ascension, and then we sometimes will make the case maybe they arrive too early or they're a year ahead of schedule. That's the case with Green Bay. Everyone was writing off that head coach. Everyone was writing off Jordan Love, saying the kid can't play. And look at the numbers he put up last year. Monster numbers. You could have argued MVP candidate. Offensive line needs to keep him upright a little more, but threw for over 4,000 yards, 30 touchdowns. And this is a team that waxed the Dallas Cowboys and just put up a monster amount of points. And listen, say what you want too, right? Because they played San Francisco really tough. I mean, they had an opportunity to win
Yeah.
that game late. So, a couple little drop offs here and there, the defensive side, running back side, but it's a big year for Aaron Jones. And they've got young receivers that were much maligned that are all of a sudden starting to step into their own.
Yeah, Q, this is a young team, and as you said, the youngest team in the NFL to win a playoff game since 1970. So that shows
Wow.
you this is they have a good, solid young group here, and everybody thought, oh, they lose Aaron Rodgers, and what are they going to do? Well, they turned this thing around very quickly. Played very well, as you said, in Dallas, and they did not have they were able to not turn the football over a lot down the stretch, and particularly against Dallas and in that big win. And Jordan Love obviously was the key
Mm,
in terms of his growth, his maturation. You saw in the last 9 games of regular season, he threw about he was completing about 70% of his passes, and the team was able to score a lot of points. So they had 22 points, 5 points per game for, and only 20.6 points per game allowed on defense. So their defense is better than a lot of people expect. And the offense, obviously, their calling card, you got Jordan Love. They're bringing in Josh Jacobs, former NFL rushing champion from a couple years ago from the Raiders. They decided to go with him. He's a little bit more fresher than Aaron Jones. He's 26 years old. He's going to get an opportunity to showcase and catch the ball in the backfield. Bring back Dylan, and then this young receiving core, Q. You know, there's so many guys you can mix and match, and they're all seem to be playing so well. Jaden Reed, he really stepped up coming out of
yeah.
Michigan State. He had some big catches for them. Christian Watson, when healthy, you always got to throw that in there with him. He's always got the hamstring injuries, but he's explosive player as well, and then Romeo Dobbs as well. So they're going to be able to spread the football around that good young, and then their tight end, Luke Musgrave, did a nice job there, and defensively, I was saying that group is better than a lot of people think. They shut down the Cowboys' explosive offense on the road, which really opened a lot of eyes.
Yeah, listen, I mean, hopefully they don't take that step back, right? Sometimes you just show up a little early to the party. That's what the Packers did. They got that big win and they pushed the 49ers to the limit. And then you have Detroit, the team that I not only had winning the NFC North, but
Yeah.
I also had them going to the Super Bowl. And we're just going to
Hmm.
lay off Campbell and the calls because I get where he was coming from. But this is a team that, see, the question now is going to be, can you get over that hump? And now your division, aside from maybe Minnesota, the Bears are going to be better. You would just think by default. You already saw what the Packers are, so they're going to be gunning for you. And now you've got a year older with a couple of these players. Jared Goff, I still think can sling it. I've always been a fan of Jared Goff, and he's put up some really nice numbers. But I think the bugaboo is going to be with this team. We're going to go back. You know, the head coach is who he is. He's going to be aggressive, and whether you deviate that in the playoffs or not, we kind of saw, what went on during the playoffs. And I know it's so easy to go back and look at that NFC Championship game. And I know it's March right now, almost April. Man, you got that team up 17. You got to pick and choose your spots. And I think that fourth down call to a wide receiver that had no business having the ball thrown to him, it's going to haunt Dan Campbell for the rest of his life, as well as the Lions franchise and the brass and the players. But if you looked at a weakness with this team, I mean, going in the offseason, what's their key, their number one offseason need in your estimation?
Yeah, Q, I probably would go with they got to fix that defense a little bit. Their offensive line is big, it's stout, and
Yeah.
they build around from there. But their defense allowed, 23 points per game, which was 395 points. So it was in the lower part of the NFL, and they're another team that kind of got in these shootouts, and they were able to win those types of games because they were so explosive in offense. But they definitely have to fix that defense, and Aaron Glenn is their defense coordinator. uh, it'd be smart for him to continue to build around Aiden
Mm-hmm.
Hutchinson, one of the best young ascending pass rushers in the game. He's a difference maker. They have a very good safety back there that they drafted as well. So there's some building pieces. And as you said, Q, a lot of people kind of snickered when you made that pick. But this team, they're another one. They're like the Packers. They're young. They have a strong belief in each other and their head coach. And yes, a lot of people are going to say, "Oh, he's overly aggressive," and it bit him in the behind and in that loss. But you saw in the playoffs that they could play with anybody,
Yep.
and they got hot at the right time. I think this team is going to continue to grow and come around together. So you have Jared Goff, as you said. Jared Goff is only 29 years old. It seems like he's been around forever. Still very young quarterback, underrated, a guy that we all kind of like, he's just a guy. Well, he's a little bit more than that. I'm not ready to say he's top 10, but he may be just right out of that top 10. And when he's hot, he can easily throw for 300 yards, 4 touchdowns, and then in the backfield, they've decided to go with Jahmyr Gibbs as their main workhorse, and this young man is just elusive, and when he gets in the open field, as you saw in the playoff win, he can take it to distance. And Amon-Ra St. Brown, another guy a lot of people don't talk about, Q. Uh, he moves the chains and he makes big plays for this offense. And then there's another one who has a great tight end in Sam Laporta. So, with Penei Sewell and that offensive line, I was saying they have a great group up front. And I fully expect the Lions to, they have the 29th pick. So they're going to be picking late in the draft. They're kind of going to see what falls to them. But this is a young team, and I expect them to keep growing. They gave Brad Holmes and the general manager and Campbell extensions. So, I continue to think this group is going to be together. And the Ford family is just thanking their lucky stars that it's all come together so quickly for this franchise.
Yeah, I think the one question that we're waiting to see answered is really the future of Jared Goff. He's got 1 year remaining on his current contract, right? So he's scheduled to make about 28 million next season, which includes a 5 million roster bonus due at the start of the 2024 league year. Okay, fine. I know he mentioned in January that he wants to sign that long-term deal. Um, I mean, what's a reasonable type of extension here? You're looking at, I mean, 4 years, a buck 80.
Well, I definitely think it's going to be over 160 million if it's 4 years. He's definitely going to go over that $40 million mark, and that's going to affect that cap situation, going to affect how this team is built and who they can bring in and keep and retain. But for this season, I think they want Goff. He's their guy, and they've given the GM and the head coach their extension, and I think they're going to do the same for the quarterback. So they've already kind of done this, moving out some other guys that may have cost some money to them, and they had some high priced free agents that they let go from a couple years ago. But the big thing with them, obviously, is they're going to have to pay Amon-Ra St. Brown too. So, and then you have Hutchinson. And everybody needs that pass rusher. He's
Yeah.
going to have to get a contract in the next couple of years as well. So, a lot of big decisions to make. But this is going to be a fun team to watch. I expect them to be in the mix in
I,
NFC.
I think he's a top 10 quarterback. Um, and you mentioned their GM, Brad Holmes, did a really nice job. I mean, you look at Jared Goff that first year in Detroit, some growing pains, but you see the improvements under then their play caller, Ben Johnson. They built that offensive line around him. You mentioned some of the weapons, right? Think about this. Montgomery, they drafted Amon-Ra St. Brown, Penei Sewell, Williamson, Gibbs. So, I mean, look, the pros are, the quarterback position is the most important, most pivotal position in all of sports, right? The con with this is, as you alluded to, less money to other players. I just think you want that offense to remain consistent, and you want to take advantage of that window of opportunity in the NFC. Because besides, let's just say the Eagles are the Eagles, that 10-1 squad, as opposed to not the team that lost 6 out of 7. Then you got the 49ers. Then you have maybe the Cowboys are still the Cowboys. We know what they do. Say an ascending team like Green Bay. And then the Lions. Who else is there you're really competing in the
Yeah,
NFC?
man. Not many. We don't talk much about the NFC South for a reason, because that division, it's a 9-win champion type division. So I don't see, other than the teams that you named, I don't see a lot of contenders up there for the NFC. I think it's going to probably be that you always have to wait to see how the season plays out, but I think it's still going to be heavy at the top. With the same teams that we saw in the playoffs from the last couple of years. Now, maybe the Rams did sneak in. The Rams could be a good team that
Yeah.
you have to keep your eye on. And in this division in particular, we're talking about in the North, it's going to be fun to see, can the Packers jump up there and take it, go past the Lions, who kind of passed them. So, you have two good young teams fighting it out at the top, and it's going to be fun to watch, because they both have, as you were saying, two very good quarterbacks in this division.
Yeah, Friday edition of On Cue. Rich Quinones here. Lloyd Vance, kind enough to join us, host of Lloyd Vance's Insider Football 1029 The Game, part of the Broad Street South Network. Give him a follow on X at Lloyd Vance, also contributor to BYP during the week with myself. We're brought to you by our good friends over at Play It Again Sports. A little housekeeping, some news and notes. So the NFL right now, the officials back proposed hip drop tackle rule change. A lot of protests with this one, right? I mean, I think I would rather see them. I know that's people have a problem with that because it's a 15-yard penalty if the defender grabs the runner with both hands or wraps the runner with both arms and basically, unweighs himself by, just dropping his hips and whatnot. I get it. Injuries, fine. But I'm more concerned about when I'm reaching for the goal line, the ball goes in the end zone. There's a friggin' touchback going the other way. Like, can we work on that rule first and foremost? So I don't know. Where are you with that right now with the hip drop tackle rule changed?
Q, it's tough. I know a lot of times these DBs, they're just trying to make a tackle. They're not trying to hurt anybody. And, in real time, once again, it's going to be like, they try to make the tackles, throw the flag, and everybody's going to say, oh, they're all for the offense. They want these
Yep.
guys to put the points on the board. Nobody likes defense. And it's just tough for these guys. I don't think it's like back when the horse collar came around and everybody was talking about Roy Williams, the old safety, and his tackling technique of pulling people and they break their ankle. So, it is what it is. And I do think that they need to look at that touchback rule. I've always not liked it.
Me
It's
too.
kind of, you remember that what was in the playoffs, there was that one play and it kind of turned the whole game for the team. And the ball went out of the end zone, and then I
Well, we saw
it
we
was the
saw it against
Ravens.
We saw it in
The
Kansas.
Ravens. Yeah,
We
it was
saw
the
it.
Ravens of Kansas City. Yeah, because he was right at the goal line,
Yeah.
and it goes through, and then they get the ball.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
feel bad because he was reaching for a touchdown. I think it's just too extreme of a penalty to take it from a team that's just so close, and the next thing you know, they're taking the ball from them and
It's a game changer.
scores away. Yeah, it is.
It's an absolute momentum changer. It doesn't, but again, they still don't know what a catch, what isn't a catch. I mean, they aren't quick to the trigger when they're going to review and they're going on a little peep show and they're waiting to see what's going on in New York. I mean, it stems back to 2 years ago in the NFC Championship, right? The fourth down play with the Eagles and the 49ers. That ball was not caught, right? I mean, it's like get the call right the first time. I mean, I can just go on and on and on. I still go back and watch the old YouTube games of some of these playoff games. I mean, imagine now in 2024 how they would review the Immaculate Reception. I mean, think about that, or the Mel Renfro play, the Oilers and the Steelers, or the Holy Roller, right? I mean, it's just you can
Yeah.
go, yeah, on and on and
And
remember,
it Des Bryant at the goal line.
yeah,
The cow. I know everybody kills Cowboys in playoffs, but that essentially that would have won that game for the
yeah,
Cowboys against the Packers.
yep.
And they said it wasn't a
Yep.
catch, and you know
Remember the ball couldn't also get tipped by two offensive players consecutively. We saw that in the Super Bowl in the 70s. So I mean, it's like we can go on and on and on, and I
yeah.
get what they're doing, but you also have to just change the rules that everyone knows are just bush league, and that's one of them. I'm being penalized for trying to break the goal line, and the ball gets smacked out of bounds, or in the back of the end zone, I should say.
Yeah, Q, why not put a proposal on the table, make these guys full time and make them watch tape and it's their only job.
Yeah,
I think that's a big thing. These refs are part time and the game's so fast and they need to have younger refs and bring them up through some kind of academy and
yeah,
just train them so that we just don't have these mistakes because too often we talk about gambling involved. It it kind of somebody's always my grandpapa used to always say, "Oh, it's all fixed." You know what I mean? There's always going to be that crowd out there when you see these calls that everybody knows are
yep,
wrong, and they
yep,
still just let it go forward.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's with baseball right now, what's going on with the potential of just a Pandora's box with Otani and his translator and, the stealing of the funds and the gambling element. I mean, you just got to wonder, NBA players making gestures that the refs are on the take. And then, we had to deal with Calvin Ridley, years ago, Tony Romo with the, what was it, the fantasy football, whatever it was a form of gambling. Um, yeah, it's just like I said, listen, we can do a whole show on that, but once they moved the team to Vegas, it was that's
Yeah, they didn't care.
no.
They liked the green. Now, before we jump on,
Yeah.
it seems like the tush push is going to be around. What are you thinking about that?
I, I I mean, listen, if you can't stop it, right? I mean, if you stop it, stop it. If you can't stop it, stop it. I hate the play. It's such a bush league play, but no one stops the Eagles. And the New England Patriots ran it for years with Tom Brady, especially at the goal line. What's the difference? Right? It's just it's almost like that rugby scrum of a play. Like if you can't stop it, stop complaining about it. The NFL's got more issues on their hands than that. I mean, thank God we got a pretty solid playoffs, and I thought it was entertaining. Got a really good Super Bowl. There was a lot of drama throughout these playoffs. There's a lot of drama in the Super Bowl. The NFL we know is king. The NFL is going to expand. They want to go to Mexico more. They want to go to Europe more. They want to go to Germany more. Um, there was talk that the NFL, I think it might have been Boomer Esiason mentioned it on the Fan a couple weeks ago that he can see a scenario where the NFL goes to 20 weeks plus the playoffs. And I don't want to misquote, but another expansion. So forget about 17 weeks, could be 18 weeks. If you're going 18 weeks, they're probably going to go to 20 weeks. And let me see if I can actually pull it up. But I mean, think about that. Now we're talking about the Super Bowl potentially in early March, late February, right?
And Q, as long as these
18 game
networks like
schedule, 18 game, pardon me, Lloyd,
yeah,
18,
18
18,
right
18.
now, yeah, which was the old USFL schedule. They
Yep.
had 18 games back in the day, and as long as you have Amazon and ABC/ESPN and all these networks fighting over televising these games, and paying these big payouts. We talked about the salary cap going up at the beginning of free agency at $30 million more per team this season. So, it they like the money. The NFL, they're going to hop on the
Of
money
course.
train no matter what. and,
But then
and
guess
fans
what? The
love it.
players, that's when hey, that's fine.
Yeah, the
The
players,
money.
they stop talking about injuries because they're getting more money. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
and fans love it. They just can't get enough. I mean, NFL hot stove has taken over.
Yep.
People aren't even talking about spring training
No,
baseball
no.
and the NBA or anything. They're talking about um, NFL and who was signed and free agency and franchise tags and getting ready for the draft. So the NFL is in front seat and they want to keep it that way.
Always. And we always want to keep Lloyd jumping on as well, BYP and on cue. Next week, the NFC South might be a short show, a little snooze fest of a division, but Lloyd will give us some great tidbits and we'll keep, going over any free agent news that breaks. Give him a follow on Twitter at Lloyd Vance. Does a great job, host of Lloyd Vance's Insider Football 1029, the game part of the Broad Street South Network, and always a good friend to the show. Appreciate a couple moments, pal. Have a great weekend. We'll do it again next week.
Q, talk to you later.